We're going to start in a few seconds here, but the play is going well. Thank you, and it's really enjoying it. And tomorrow, Tony Shalhoub's going to come watch it because he's our buddy,
Oh, nice.
and he's seen it. He saw the workshop version. He gave her, and it's fun. It's been a lot of fun. I'm doing talk facts and everything. So we're letting everyone join, folks. We're going to start like in 10 more seconds because we have to get a quorum here. The government shut down, but
Hello,
we're still
Diane. See,
open.
I try to say hi to all my people. I can see their names scrolling. It's like
Hi, Glenn
we
from
did. So,
Minnesota.
Dean, you may not know it, but 8:30 every night on Substack, we have a community meeting and
I
we talk
know.
about the legal issues of the day. You need to come on. I had Brian Tyler Cohen on last night talking about the political implications of the shutdown because what do I know about politics? I'm a rule of law
Sure,
guy.
I'm
So,
coming. Let me know when you want me on. My show is live on SiriusXM 6 to 9, but the third hour we tend to pre-tape during the day. In
okay.
fact, so let me do my intro here. In fact, this is going to air tonight on my SiriusXM show. But here we go. Ready, everyone? Everyone, be cool. Let's start it like all professional. Hey everyone, welcome to the Dean Obeidallah Show, also known as the Dean's Report Live. And look who's here. It's our friend Glenn Kirschner, former 30-year prosecutor, served in the U.S. Army in JAG Corps, which is very relevant to what we're going to start our conversation. Of course, Justice Matters on YouTube. You have to subscribe to it. And his Substack, very, very popular, glennkirschner.substack.com. Check it out. Glenn, nice to see you. Welcome back.
Great, great to be with you, Dean.
So, my friend, I wanted to look. We talk a lot of legal stuff together, but you serve in the U.S. Army, and I wanted to get your reaction as a veteran. Donald Trump, and we'll put it in context. It was the 70-minute rambling of a man with dementia, cognitive decline. But at one point, he said something that was new and it was very jarring. And a few things. One was that, and I'll read it. He said, "This is going to be a big thing for the people in this room who are all admirals and generals because it's the enemy from within, and we have to handle it before it gets out of control." He's talking to our leaders of our military about the enemy within, which is us. So, what is your reaction to someone who's a veteran who served?
Yeah, so I served on active duty 6.5 years back in the 80s into the early 90s as an Army JAG prosecutor before I left to join the Department of Justice. And I absolutely loved the speech by Hegseth and Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you why I loved it in a minute. Not for the substance, I'll tell you that. But let me add, you said that the generals and the admirals were at the meeting down at Quantico. Also, the senior enlisted leadership of our military, the men and women who really make things happen. Take it from somebody who, turned to my NCOs, my sergeants, my non-commissioned officers every dang day to make sure I was doing things right. They were in the room to the sergeants major. And so here's the thing, Dean. I don't think anything could have galvanized the view among our military leadership that Donald Trump is dangerously unfit. I mean, when he said things like, and I'm reading from the BBC now, this is how we're viewed around the world. They said that, he said that the American people, in essence, are the quote, enemy from within. And he told the military leadership to use American cities as military training grounds. I have to believe that to a person, these are people who take their oath of loyalty to the Constitution deadly seriously, and they know that, and they never will pledge loyalty to a tyrant or an autocrat or a dictator, which is exactly how Donald Trump came across in those rambling, incoherent, demented, and depraved comments. And I have to believe every military leader was saying to him or herself, oh, I am not going to be following unlawful orders to attack or use as a training ground American cities. He is not going to pit our military against the American citizenry. And I think that point was driven home beautifully by that performance by Donald Trump. Pete Hegseth just beclowned himself. He's plugging his book. He's talking about the fat generals and let me show you how to do a push-up. You got to cut your hair and shave back. I mean, what an effing clown this person is. And again, to a military member in there, they must have been internally both laughing and dying, seeing that this guy is the Secretary of Defense.
Pete Hegseth, it felt like he was doing an infomercial, like he was Tony Little or something like that. And now buy this, and I'm going to sell this. Let's get back to Donald Trump. One thing I really liked, and I want to get your reaction, the generals and the military people there did not applaud. It
Yeah.
unnerved Donald Trump. They were not applauding. He begged them. He did a Jeb Bush, please clap moment almost. He was like, if you want to clap, you can. And because it was not going well. What does it say? Is that just a sign of professionalism that they're not going to play games? Nobody cheered when he said, I need you to help me with the enemy within. And I think he was hoping to see who was loyal and who was not, but nobody cheering, I thought was an important message.
Yeah, I think Trump, the miscalculation was he thought that this was going to be like his MAGA audience. You know, they go nuts when he says things like, hey, beat the hell out of your fellow American citizen right there, and I'll pay your legal fees. So a couple of things are at work here. One, I think they were probably rightfully appalled and disgusted at what
Mhm.
Donald Trump was suggesting, that, they should be turned against the American citizenry and, use them as fodder for their military training missions. And I also think they're a little like the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court justices attend a State of the Union speech, they don't clap. Why? Because they're not there to cheer one side or boo the other. They're there to remain impartial and neutral, at least in theory, not the six right wing justices. But the military is the same. The military is apolitical. Yeah, you may say, but they're largely, sort of conservative leaning folks, and I don't disagree with that. I met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of soldiers in my time in the Army. Yeah, they may be a little bit, conservative leaning, but they stand squarely on the Constitution, and they don't waver one way or another because a president of one political party or the other happens to be making comments. They wanted to come across as serious, thoughtful, apolitical
Right.
military leaders, and that's what they are. And that's why I have to believe they were absolutely appalled by Donald Trump's ranting and rambling. And clearly, he's not well. He was slurring
No.
his speech. He
Yeah.
couldn't put two words or two thoughts together. That also has to give them pause, because if that is the commander in chief, you know, we in the military also want to make sure that our commanders are of sound mind, exercising good judgment. And, Donald Trump proved that he is not of sound mind, and he's never exercised good judgment.
No, and the points you just made, and that I'm making with you about his cognitive decline, that I've had doctors on who've said it's consistent with dementia. You don't see corporate media having those conversations, which is such a disservice to everyone. You can't trust them. But I want to go back to something you mentioned, Glenn, about not following orders which are illegal. I had a listener call my show last night, Brandon, whose uncle is a four-star general, and he said in the Air Force, and he said he saw him at a family event a few weeks ago, who said, you don't have to worry. We're not going to follow illegal orders. But the problem, but he pointed out something I was not aware of. He goes, but if I say I won't follow the order, they might remove me and put someone in there who will follow the order. What can you say about that? Who's worked in JAG Corps as a prosecutor?
Yeah, so as a prosecutor, I not only prosecuted court martial cases when soldiers committed crimes, I was also the legal advisor to commanders on sometimes on the issue of what constitutes a lawful order versus an unlawful order. It is not a bright line, Dean. It can be very difficult to discern. We know now, courtesy of a federal court judge ruling, that when Donald Trump deployed troops to the streets of Los Angeles, it was absolutely unlawful, violated two federal statutes. And here is Donald Trump doing it again, right? Deploying the military to Portland. He's threatening Chicago. So now the soldiers and the airmen and the sailors and the seamen, they know that these are unlawful orders, because not only is the law pretty self-explanatory, even though it's got a fancy name, the Posse Comitatus Act, it just means that the military cannot police the streets of America. They can't engage in
Mhm.
civilian law enforcement. But now you also have a federal court judge ruling after a trial that what Donald Trump did in LA was illegal, and it is similarly illegal, when he does it in other cities. So, it's easy for me to sit here and say, therefore, everybody should be disobeying these orders. It's just not black and white. It can be very challenging.
Yeah.
But you ask about the consequences. Some military commander might want to be a guardrail in the military against Donald Trump's autocracy. So he may say, listen, okay, I'll kind of obey this unlawful order because if I don't, I may be pulled from my job and somebody worse may be coming behind me.
That's the
And
point. Yeah.
but here's the thing, Dean, that is not their decision to make. It
Oh,
is not the consequences of disobeying a patently unlawful order that drive your decision making train about whether you should obey or disobey an unlawful order. It is your oath to the Constitution that governs, and you must disobey a patently unlawful order. I throw that word patently in because that's the standard, not something that looks unlawful, it feels unlawful, it sounds, but I'm not sure. It has to be like kill everyone in the village, men, women, and children, whether armed or unarmed. That, of course, is the infamous Lieutenant Calley example from Vietnam. And the courts said you do not have a defense of I was just following orders. Why? Because you have a sworn duty to disobey patently unlawful orders. If anybody's interested in learning more and listening to a deep dive, I did a 3-part interview series with Dan Maurer, who used to teach criminal law and constitutional law at West Point. He now
wow.
teaches law school out in Ohio. He's a retired Army JAG. He's both brilliant and a wonderful communicator in a layman friendly way. You can go on my YouTube channel. I'm not pushing my YouTube channel, but hit subscribe. And you can see all 3 parts if you want to do a deep dive into this area.
Glenn has over 1 million YouTube followers because he tells people to subscribe. He is a genius. I don't. I have like 33,000. I have to beg people more. I want to get your reaction to something else. Pete Hanks has said to the people there he's going to order a full review of the Pentagon's definition of what they deems toxic leadership, bullying, and hazing. And he said he wants to be able to have these officers not have to second guess what they do. And he goes, if that makes me toxic, then so be it. I want to get your reaction to the idea of him wanting to unleash people being cruel and toxic and bullying in violation of what the rules are now and thinking that is good for soldiering.
And even more directly, I think he said, we can't just follow these stupid rules of engagement. Dean, rules of engagement are there to protect civilians, to protect our military members, because if they do something that could be deemed unlawful, well, guess what? They have a court martial coming their way. The rules of engagement are there for a reason. They
Yeah.
protect everybody. And, there is an argument that if we throw the rules of engagement out the window, if we throw sort of honor and integrity and law abiding military operations out the window, then guess what? Anytime our military members are on foreign soil, whether in a time of conflict or not, then people will be inspired to attack them because there are no rules. I don't pretend that everybody, in all countries will abide by the Geneva Conventions or the law of war or rules of engagement or any of that. But what I can promise is if we, throw it all out the window, it endangers, not protects our own military members. So Pete Hegseth, he's it's like he was talking to a bunch of 12-year-old boys and girls in that auditorium in Quantico. And I love the Politico reporting, which has a whole bunch of anonymous quotes from military members saying and highlighting that they weren't having any of it. And that's a good thing. And that should reassure us that our military leadership knows what's going on. And I think they're prepared to stand strong.
Yeah, to me, it was very important that nobody applauded these outrageous comments because I think they were looking to see who was loyal and who wasn't. And if half the people were applauding consistently and the other half weren't, I would have been worried. But since nobody applauded this outrageous conduct and comments, they have no idea. Getting back to a law thing here, the if Donald Trump were to order the troops in violation of the law to go into the streets and take Chicago and that kind of stuff, that he is, am I misreading what the Supreme Court said last summer? He is immune from prosecution for that?
He is, if he violates federal law, but the Supreme Court deems that his conduct in violating the law was within the scope of his either official duties or was him exercising a core constitutional function like commanding the military, which he and he alone
I
is
know.
the commander in chief and he's allowed to command the military. The Supreme Court, horrifically and contrary to the express language of the Constitution, said he's good to go. He can commit all the crimes he wants, up to and including murder, with absolute immunity from prosecution. Now, everybody under him who is complicit in his crimes by carrying out those unlawful orders are on the hook. They could be prosecuted, but then the fallback position for Trump is, yeah, but I've got the pardon power. And that's another one that y'all can't touch. So I can pardon everyone in the military who, for example, obeys my orders to murder Venezuelans in international waters before we even get into American cities. And we're all good. We all go home free, which is pure effing insanity from our Supreme Court. And as Justice Sotomayor suggested, it's a blueprint for autocracy, dictatorship, and the end of American democracy.
I agree. It's deeply concerning, and because people have commented here on my show and emails that what Trump is doing, it sounds like it's traitorous. It's not treason as we know the legal definition, but the idea of telling the troops that the enemy within is the biggest concern. And he starts with invasion, then he gets the enemy within, which are us. The invasion, you could argue, maybe he meant immigrants, which they're not invading this nation, but that was he's getting at. So I want to touch on another thing before we run out of time, my friend. And I know you covered at great length. Is that's the DOJ indictment of James Comey, which is kind of like lost now. Like it was a big news, and now we've moved on. We have a shutdown and other things going on here. We've talked about the fact that the one thing that might cause these lawyers who do what Trump wants some pain, because Trump can pardon them for criminal prosecutions later, the lawyers like Lindsey Halligan, but they could be disbarred. And I'm not saying for sure she would be disbarred. We have to see how it all plays out. But what is your take on the case, and where do you think they're exposing themselves, Lindsey Halligan or other prosecutors who work on this case?
So, based on what I've seen of the evidence in the public reporting and the sort of the road that got us to a James Comey indictment, which includes a Donald Trump appointed U.S. attorney in that office, the Eastern District of Virginia, Alexandria U.S. Attorney's Office, Eric Siebert, who was a longtime prosecutor, career prosecutor in that office since 2010, highly regarded by everybody there. In fact, the reporting was when he announced that he was resigning. I know Trump would say he fired him, but it looked like he resigned one way or another. He left rather than vindictively indict James Comey because there was no case there. The reporting was people were in tears. The career folks in that office were in tears to see him go, to see him treated that way. Then he finds, Lindsey Halligan, who has never prosecuted so much as a parking ticket. She was an insurance lawyer. She was a beauty pageant contestant. She was in charge of scrubbing facts and whitewashing anything from the Smithsonian that might be offensive to Donald Trump. These are not exactly bona fides to be, a top prosecutor in one of the most significant U.S. attorney's offices in the country. So it is the path that this case took to what appears to be a vindictive indictment. And then Lindsey Halligan's first court appearance, she just crashed and burned. We actually recreated it here on Substack. We read the two parts from the transcript. She didn't know what the hell she was doing. She had no idea what she was doing. So now it looks like she's desperately trying to find a prosecutor who is willing to put their license to practice law on the line by signing on to this vindictive prosecution. I predict anybody who associates themselves with this prosecution will be referred to their state bar where they hold their law license for an ethics investigation. And I suspect they will join the ignoble club of Rudy Giuliani, Kenneth Chesebro, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, the band of disbarred lawyers, because this case should not have been brought. It will be the poster child for a vindictive prosecution case, and it will probably be dismissed by the judge prior to trial based on a motion to dismiss that will inevitably be filed by James Comey's lawyers.
Even Andrew McCarthy, who's a Fox News legal analyst, a former federal prosecutor, you may even know him. He said, there's no case there. Literally said, there's no case. He goes, there's nothing here. This is ridiculous. And McCarthy pointed out there's a constitutional deficiency that if you read the indictment, you don't even know the date. You don't know the facts to prepare your defense. Now, I know I had Danny Savalas on yesterday, and he said, they'll file for a bill of particulars and get more of the details. But
Yeah.
it's such a garbage case, and no other prosecutor would sign. She signs it herself, says a lot. So the last thing, Glenn, I know this is not a legal thing, but I think it's kind of intriguing to me and fun at the same time. So Trump 2 days in a row releases AI videos to attack Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. Hakeem 2 days in a row, and I'm like, do you not get it? We don't need to use AI to tell people who Donald Trump is. We have real images of him with Jeffrey Epstein. We have images of him on January 6th telling people go down to the Capitol and we're, the fight like hell and all that kind of stuff. We have images of him being convicted of 34 felonies. We have him on Access Hollywood tape. We don't need AI to show who Donald Trump is yet. There's this guy using AI to try to smear Democrats. I don't know where it ends. Like at some point, I guess he'll just cloud the system where no one knows what is fact and what is true. But isn't it a little rich of this guy to be like, I'm going to fabricate stuff? We don't have to fabricate. Here's you and Jeffrey Epstein, buddy.
I don't know who he thinks he's appealing to. I guess that there are some in his, MAGA group of supporters who will laugh at and cheer along with anything he does, no matter how depraved. I've heard somebody repeatedly refer to this. It might have been Lawrence O'Donnell as political pornography, which I think is a good way to characterize it. But here's what I think, Dean. I think with every time he ratchets up the level of insanity and juvenile behavior, I think you're probably having a few more people peel away from him because in aggregate, they at some point realize that this dude is not well. This dude should not have the nuclear codes available to him. And I still hope against hope, and I will never stop, putting the pressure on Republicans in Congress to step up and save democracy. Just cross the aisle and save democracy. You all know it's at risk.
Yeah.
If ever you wanted sort of a shining example of putting democracy at risk, it's when a demented president says, I want to turn the military loose on the American people and I want to use American cities as military training grounds, fodder for them to be able to competently kill people around the world if push comes to shove. Come on now, Republicans. I'm never going to stop urging you to cross the aisle to save democracy. Why did the chicken cross the aisle? To save democracy. Let's just a handful of you. Let's do it.
I think a chicken's a good analogy, and Republicans are chickens. And if anything, they'll run back to Trump, who's like Colonel Sanders, and let him eat them because he's just like, they have no backbone. That's
Yeah.
it. So, Glenn, before we wrap up, so people should check out your YouTube. It's Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner. Your Substack, which I'm sure many subscribe. If you don't, please do, glennkirschner.substack.com. Anything else? Are there T-shirts, hats you're selling? Is there thermos, Justice Matters,
You know, the other,
lunchbox? What do you got?
I love the community meetings that we have on Substack every night. So I'll invite you to come along, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then if you want to get some behind the scenes stuff and some Team Justice stickers and a handwritten note, come on over to Patreon. That's the behind the scenes here at Justice Matters. That's the other place where we have a nice community over there.
Well, Glenn, thank you very much. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. We had a really nice audience, a lot of nice comments I saw there. We appreciate it. And please sign up for my stuff because I'm the neediest guy on this conversation. I'm so much needier than Glenn. He's very secure. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dean. All right.
Bye-bye.